It's pretty rare for me to review games last year, but I did review Far Cry 5. I didn't give it a rating though, so let me sum up my thoughts about it. It's fine. I enjoyed the gameplay and the changes that it made from Far Cry 4. There are some changes that I like, there are some changes that I didn't like, but regardless, it's a fun and enjoyable experience. There's just really nothing that innovative to shake up the formula, and this game wouldn't change your mind if you didn't like the series already, but at least it's a fun and enjoyable game, and I do like it despite having tons of flaws, including the rather depressing endings of the game, which serve as the basis for the next one. I'm giving Far Cry 5 3 caps out of 5. And now we have New Dawn, which sets to be a standalone expansion pack for the game because it was sold for $40 and the game didn't sell very well. Why did this game not sell very well? There's a very good reason for it, and it's a good topic to talk about. Welcome to appabendyt's Uncapped, figuring out games and why they flop. Today's review is going to be about Far Cry New Dawn, the direct sequel to Far Cry 5 that continues upon the depressing endings and sold as a standalone expansion pack of some sort for the last game. So what's the story? Well, it's been many years since the nuclear bomb ending, which is the canon ending for the last game. Hope County has survived a nuclear bomb and a brand new civilization emerged. A new dawn, if you will. You are playing as a captain and you are tasked by the people of Hope County to help them to fight against the Highwaymen, a group of raiders that, well, raids people. There's really nothing interesting beyond that. With you and your friends at the settlement named Prosperity, together you're going to rebuild civilization and make a much better society. Now before we start off, I should say that this game looks absolutely freaking gorgeous. It's a gorgeous looking game with very vibrant and colorful landscape that creates a unique post-apocalyptic atmosphere that I really do appreciate. But that's every Ubisoft game at this point. Every Ubisoft game always have a great edge in terms of its graphics and artistic quality. The game still looks great and sounds great, but again, it's typical for Ubisoft. The biggest problem with Far Cry New Dawn is that it's all flash and no substance to a game that is already all flash and no substance. This isn't by any means a bad game. In fact, I actually rather enjoyed it for a moment, but it's a $40 standalone expansion pack to a game that pretty much everyone agrees to be not that great. It's okay, it's fine, but if you're making the same fine, then it would only get tiresome. Let's start off with talking about the good bits. I find the story and the narrative to be slightly stronger in this one, and it's mostly because there's a much better focus of the main characters. The protagonist is still silent, which I really hate, but in exchange for a silent protagonist, we have an Alex Vance type of surrogate character, Carmina Rai, whom you can ask to be your companion throughout the game, which does make the story to be less about you as the captain and more about her and the Prosperity, and that's not a bad idea. But that being said, the story is still just fine. What makes it worse is that the villains are so boring. They're not really that interesting aside from being twins. That's it. They're not that fun. They're not that charming. They're just violent. But that's every Far Cry villain these days. One of the biggest changes for the game is weapon customization. Despite having a weapons workbench, the weapon customization is straight up removed. You can no longer put your favorite sights and combinations. There are merely preset weapons and you're gonna have to deal with that, which kind of makes the game feel less personal. But it did make me want to unlock better weapons throughout. In the previous games, I see almost little to no reason to upgrade my weapons, with my starting assault rifle with a recon scope and a silencer is doing just a fine job. But does removing customization entirely warrants the significantly better weapon progression? I honestly don't really know. So what else to talk about the game? Well, not much really. The overall problem that I have with this game is that there's really nothing much to talk about it. The story, fine. The gameplay, fine. The combat, fine. But it's the same fine that we got from Far Cry 5. Now, it is a standalone expansion pack sold for $20 less than a typical AAA game, but, well, it's really weird for me to say this. It's also a bit too long. Expansion packs are usually at the very least shorter, but there's a decent amount of content in this game, mostly because the game just copy and paste stuff from Far Cry 5, which has a map the size of a typical mainline Far Cry game. It will also take you at least 20 to 30 hours to beat this game if you take out all the outposts and complete the story missions and side missions. If you do just the story missions, it will be significantly shorter, sure, but Ubisoft knows that you can't just sell the game based based on a story campaign alone, so they just took the map from the 5th game, remodeled it, and plastered it with outposts and side missions that feel more exhaustive and tiresome as you get through them, especially if you have played Far Cry 5 already for tons and tons of hours. Ubisoft games these days love to make their games arbitrarily long, despite having a pretty standard gameplay that doesn't really impress, just to make people say, well, this game is $40, but at least there's 20 to 30 hours worth of content. But games don't have to be long. Games just need to provide a great experience. I'd rather play a game that's only around 7 to 8 hours long, but provides a great experience, than a game that has 100 plus hours of content that has a boring and tiresome experience. Overall, Far Cry New Dawn was just not impressive. The game doesn't really have a strong selling point. People already played Far Cry 5, and most people thought that the game was just fine. It's nothing impressive. Far Cry 5 is pretty decent as far as Far Cry games go, but New Dawn is nowhere near a decent Far Cry game. Mostly because it's literally the same game reskinned, and people just want more than that, especially when Metro Exodus is on the market now. They want innovation, and Ubisoft just doesn't bring that innovation into the table. This game has no reason to exist. It's a waste of time to develop this game, in my opinion. You could have put your resources more into making a better series or innovate the series in general, but, well, Ubisoft is going to be Ubisoft. Far Cry New Dawn gets 2 caps out of 5. Ubisoft, make something new. For God's sake, make something competitive. Make something unique and innovative. This game was released at the same time as Metro Exodus, one of the most anticipated first-person shooters of the year. Yeah, no wonder why your sales are terrible. You're competing against a game that people have been yearning to play for years. The game is priced for only $40, and that is a fair price. It's not a AAA game by any means, it's just a little side game that costs less that just so happened to have the map of a AAA game. It still packs a lot of hours for you to finish, but again, if you played Far Cry 5, you'd be tired of this game about 10 hours in, despite having 20 to 30 hours worth of content. So the question is, would you force yourself to finish Far Cry 5 again, only to gain pretty much nothing from it? For me, if the story was really good and interesting, then I would tell people to buy the game, but as it is, it's a puddle of piss in a large ocean, and I'd recommend buying something better.